With so many new changes and a new hero in Ultron coming in season 2.5, as a coach and an analyst, I want to break down exactly what changes matter to the meta and big notable characters that are going to be far better in the meta, far worse in the meta, and new strategies and compositions that are going to be created with all of these changes coming soon. Now, the first category I want to talk about are meta heroes. Heroes that were very dominant in the pro and existing high-ranked meta. There are many of them that got nerfed. How much did these nerfs actually affect how viable these heroes are? But before that, I'm extremely excited to announce my new partnership with Apex Gaming PCs. Whether you're looking to upgrade your old rig or finally make that jump from console to PC, then Apex has everything you could need. You see, Apex PCs are custom, hand-built to order, so they can fit any specifications you like. They also have different categories like Bronze, Streamer, or Streamer Plus. For those of you who want to jump into content creation and streaming, you can get a PC that is designed for all your current and future needs, and it's a super seamless process. Not only are they going to build it and test it for you, but they're going to make sure that everything is pre-installed and ready for you to go, so you don't have to worry about your computer not working, or if there's any problems that you run into. Apex will be there to solve any problems you run across. Now, if you want to have a great grinding experience, you deserve to have quality equipment that works and looks freaking amazing. But use my link in the description and discount code COACH for 5% off your next order. Definitely check it out right now in the links down below. And of course, thanks so much to Apex Gaming for sponsoring this video. Now, first is Groot. And remember, Groot got a wall CD that is massive. 4 extra seconds on his big iron wall cooldown, which is a really big deal, and less damage to his primary. Now, specifically, that wall cooldown is the big one. Having a giant cooldown on the wall is really going to change his loop overall. Good Groot still use that wall intermingled with the other walls to just really cut off line of sight, and having 4 extra seconds, really big deal. And the damage, while not being that big of a deal because it's just a small amount of damage, it is going to make it so that Groot gets ultimate less quickly. I do think that Groot got ultimate a little bit too quickly before. Now, what does this really do to Groot? I think also you need to keep in mind that Punisher Rocket team up is no longer here, and in rank that was the easiest way to counter Groot and Groot walls. You can no longer do that anymore. But what really this nerf does is it makes it so that Groot is more vulnerable and has more windows of time where he's vulnerable and less overall wall uptime. And I think that that is a really big deal. And it pushes Groot away from the best tank in the game conversation. I think he was in that conversation before, and now he's going to be a bit more map-centric. There are going to be certain choke points and maps that he's still really dominant. There's still going to be some comps that he's really good with. You know, Bucky pulling people behind a wall, getting walled off. Still going to be a great fundamental strategy, but Groot is not going to be a necessary ban anymore. I think in ranked play, a lot of people were figuring out ways to counter Groot before anyways, and now more than ever, Groot is going to be slipping through the cracks of bans. And I think on some maps, you're going to queue up into Dracula's Palace or whatever, and you're going to be like, yeah, I do not want to play against a good Groot at that choke point. But on other maps, you're going to be like, I don't really care too much about a Groot here. And the buff to poke comps as a whole, which we'll talk a little bit more later, is something that is going to edge out Groot on some of the non-choke heavy maps. So Groot is going to really feel this hit, but it isn't going to make him unplayable or just eliminate him from the meta. And in a lot of cases in ranked, you're going to be able to play him more if you're a Groot main. You're going to actually be able to lock this character. He's not going to get banned nearly as much. Now, the next character is Emma, and Emma did get a really big nerf. Not only can she not double combo anymore and just has less overall uptime with her really powerful diamond form that allows her to do all sorts of high burst and play potential things, but she also has less survivability with her wall. And I think that those things combined, plus the slight nerf in cooldown of her, telepathic pulse, is all going to make Emma quite a bit weaker. And most notably, they did buff the range in her primary, and this further kind of emphasizes the whole point of this patch and the whole direction of the meta. If you get one thing from this video, it's that poke compositions are going to be far stronger. Everything is being pushed through poke. Everything is being pushed towards poke. Dive is weaker, brawl is weaker, but long distance damage exchange, think Magneto, Strange, Emma, Hela, Hawkeye, these types of range are incentivized. And Emma is going to be playing better from range now than she did before. And with the increase in cooldowns and damage of her combo and the decrease in burst of her combo, she's not able to be fit into a brawl nearly as much. She has small bursts of times that she could do that, but it isn't going to be the core build of her playstyle. I think she's going to fit poke better. So will Emma be unplayable? Absolutely not. She's actually still going to be one of the strongest tanks in the game, but she isn't going to be as overtuned or overpowered as she was before, because based on all the stats and the numbers, Emma was undoubtedly completely overtuned, very, very busted, and I think this reels her more back in line with something that is balanced, but she's still on the very, very, very strong side, still undoubtedly going to be a top 3 tank even after these nerfs. Now, moving on to number 3 on this list is Iron Fist, and unfortunately for Iron Fist players, they really did a number on Iron Fist. Now, while Groot is going to impact him and Emma is also going to impact her, these characters are still going to be dominant in certain situations in the meta. Iron Fist is going to be more or less removed from top meta play after these changes. These changes really hurt the character. Remember, Iron Fist got several core buffs. Not only does he get less maximum HP, but he also gets less health when he is blocking than before. And now he has less of a distance with his punch, so he's not going to be able to use his punch to kind of fly like he used to. And he doesn't get as much cooldown reduction from his hits. And I really think that like any one of these changes would have made a huge impact on the character. 2 of these changes make this character really fall a tier. All 3 of these changes make this character really a shell of his former self. I'm not entirely sure why they keep doing this, where they overbuff a character and then way over nerf a character, but Iron Fist is definitely the victim of that this patch. I think they were just afraid of not doing enough, and they really just want to remove him from the meta for at least 2.5. So I really don't think that you'll be seeing a lot of Iron Fist in your games, and the character that was once one of the most banned characters in 2.0 will most likely not be banned at all going into 2.5. Now for Human Torch is a bit harder to evaluate. They did nerf several aspects of the character, including his survivability, his team up with Invisible Woman, and also his overall damage and AoE. And the reason that he's harder to evaluate is because with that Invisible Woman pocket and, you know, being enabled by his team, he still does a lot of the same stuff as he did before. But as we saw with Human Torch before his buffs, it was like Human Torch was unplayable, he got some buffs, then he was still unplayable, he got some buffs, he was still unplayable, and then eventually it was enough altogether to just make him busted, right? Now, he didn't get nerfs to the point where he's automatically unplayable, but it does mean that Human Torch isn't going to be as powerful in some instances, and I think that there are other flyers and other counters to him rising in the meta that make Human Torch worse in some of those scenarios. Really what this change is going to do is it's going to separate the people that really know what they're doing in Human Torch from the players that kind of just bandwagoned onto him because he was really strong in 2.0. As far as whether or not this character will be a meta staple, I think that there is enough counters to the character and of course buffs to poke characters that can counter him that I think he's going to be able to be kept in check. And in coordinated play, I think that there are better flyers that are actually more effective up against him, like Iron Man. Iron Man, of course, has a favorability in the matchup simply because he can get the overshields while in the air still and dictate the fight or start the fight in the air without having to slam down. But of course, if a Human Torch catches him off guard, he can win it. But we're not here to talk about the matchup. We're just talking about what people are doing in pro play. Now for Namor, they nerfed a lot on this character. They nerfed his survivability with his orb, right? They also nerfed the range of his squids and the uptime of his gamma squid. That's a lot of nerfs going around at Namor, but I'm gonna be honest with you, Namor is still gonna be very, very strong with that Hulk team up. Notably, Namor has always been extremely powerful, and especially if you're using him aggressively, throwing some squids on an off angle and trying to kill support, he can still do that in a very similar way as he could before. And because he's completely cycling out after he uses his bubble anyways, it's not like he's going to need to use it again very quickly, so it's not that big of a deal that that was nerfed or that cooldown was nerfed. Now, the range is going to really hurt him up against notably poke characters and in some cases flyers as well. So I do think that he's going to have worse matchups against characters like Hawkeye and Hela that he already didn't have a great matchup against. But Namor is still going to have a place alongside Hulk as a really powerful threat. And Hulk is a character that is still very strong even though he got removed or he lost Iron Man as part of his team up. Hulk has been really just dominating this meta lately, and Namor is still powerful enough, has enough synergy, especially when you're combining him with like Rocket, Ultimate, and things like that to get kills with his Ultimate. It's going to be easier to do so now than it was before. So I do think that overall, Namor is going to be in a fine spot and still going to be an established character in the meta. He's been really overtuned for a while, probably an unnecessarily evil due to the fact that there was so many powerful dive characters, but with a lot of dive being nerfed, now they're more free to nerf Namor as well. Now, Psylocke is an interesting one, a character that is receiving a nerf that makes her combo far less reliable to do with that alternate fire damage heavily decreased. Trying to combo 250 HP heroes is not going to be even possible. You're going to have to incorporate a dash into that majority of the time. And also, using your invisible to get out of situations is going to be a bit harder, if not impossible, because of the very limited amount of time. Now, Psylocke still gets to play a more passive role. I think that overall, Psylocke going in and like going for combo kills is a little bit overrated compared to Psylocke just applying pressure from an alternate angle, building up ultimates, applying pressure with her team, or focusing down targets together. And she can still do all these things, and she still has that team up with Emma. But I really worry here that she's more reliant on the team up. Even though the team up with Emma got nerfed, now if you really want to get a consistent combo off, having that Emma team up is going to allow you to do so, when it's going to be very hard to do it without it. And I do think that Psylocke is a character that is probably going to be either played with Emma as one of the best DPS or not seeing much play outside of it, similar to how Star-Lord mainly sees play in the res comp and doesn't see as much play without it. Now, Captain America, a character that did see a little bit of pro play, but not a ton of data to pull that from, as we didn't really see a ton of major tournaments in 2.0. That being said, in ranked play, Captain America became a menace very quickly because he was very difficult to focus down and kill, and that's exactly what these nerfs have done. They decreased his survivability. Instead of his shield recharging after 2 seconds, it's going to recharge its HP after 4 seconds, meaning a lot less shield uptime, and of course, slight nerfs to his base HP. It's going to make him a little bit easier to focus down, even if it's only 25 HP. Still, those two changes collectively mean that Captain America is going to be a lot easier to focus down, a lot easier to force out. And what does this actually mean? I think that Captain America is going to be harder than ever to play as a solo point staller, as an isolated diver. But in situations where you're going in with other dive characters, dive threats, he's still going to be just as good as ever. Because you don't need, you know, a crazy amount of survivability and uptime to bait out a couple of cooldowns and pave the way for another diver, but you do need a crazy amount of survivability to constantly live in the enemy backline. And that's really the strategy that is nerfed the most here. But if you're going in with some other diver, you're still going to be able to terrorize a ranked ladder or ranked lobby. As far as pro play is concerned, it's definitely a little bit too early to tell how these changes are going to affect him, because we still don't quite know how his previous buffs affected him from his 2.0 changes. Now, last up, a character that did get nerfed is Rocket. Now, he did get a slight decrease in his burst damage, but really, this is a straight-up slap on the wrist. And you might be saying, hey, Mills, he lost his synergy with specifically Punisher. And I'm going to tell you that Rocket had a way higher win rate than Punisher across all ranks. So even though that synergy was good, it was not what made Raccoon strong. And really, Rocket has a colossally high pick rate and a colossally high win rate relative to that pick rate. And this is just a slight slap on the wrist. You're still going to be able to get so much healing output, hitting people in their feet, getting the double bounce. And really, the only thing that's going to change here, in my opinion, is that the ult is going to be slightly longer to get. You're not going to get ult quite as fast with the slight nerf, but it really is so minor that Raccoon is probably still going to be the most picked and dominant support. I think that they went way too light-handed on this, because this character was undoubtedly the best character by the numbers in 2.0. Now, there are some other characters that we got to talk about in the meta. These are characters that got some pretty sizable buffs in the meta, and they will most likely see substantial meta play. Let's talk about exactly how much these buffs matter. First off, with Magneto, and Magneto now is going to be able to get his alternate fire, his stun, a bit faster. Not a crazy big buff, but really, Magneto didn't need one. He was already very, very strong before, and the two other best tanks, specifically Groot and Emma, did get nerfs, while Magneto, the other best tank in that same, top 3, got buffed. So he's clearly going to be the biggest winner here. And then Strange is also receiving quite a substantial buff as well. And I want you to just think about this here. when we look at the nerfs to a lot of other characters, we look at nerfs to dive, we look at nerfs to other tanks, and then we see buffs to 2 poke tanks and then some poke DPS. Poke is back on the menu. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some double shield compositions. We're definitely going to be seeing more Magneto. We're definitely going to be seeing a lot of Magneto Emma. So Poke is going to be played a lot. And Magneto is definitely going to be the central figure around that. But it's basically any composition that is not like an all-in dive is going to be centered mostly around Magneto. Magneto's also a very flexible tank, so regardless of what your other tank that you're pairing with him, whether it's a Thing, whether it's a Groot, whether it's an Emma, whether it's a Strange, he's gonna be a really good stabilizing force that can assist in a lot of different ways, also with Venom as well. So Magneto's gonna be definitely super meta going into this next season. Very similar to how he was now, but probably even more so as we move towards this poke-based meta. Now, speaking of which, Hela is now gonna be getting more ammo, 2 more ammo, and while this is pretty small of a buff, Hela's a character that a lot of high-ranked players will say has needed a nerf for a long time. She's been one of the best characters in pro play, one of the best characters in high-ranked play, and the reason that they're buffing Hela is not only does it kind of consistently go with this buff to poke compositions in the meta like we talked about, but also there's a giant rise in flyers, and I think that there's a certain fear in the rise of flyers, from Storm to Johnny to Iron Man to Ultron. All of these characters combined need other characters that can contest them, and Hela is one of the best character, if not the best character, to contest them. So even though this character might get target banned and banned more now than ever to pave the way for flyers, the way that they're buffing her in the meta is just making it a little bit easier as the anti-flyer character if she's left unbanned. Now, Hawkeye is also getting some pretty substantial buffs, but when you read the buffs, I want you to understand that he is losing his anchor. So while you read the buffs on the list and you say, wow, Hawkeye is getting so buffed, the reality is he's not getting buffed as much as you would think because he's losing that anchor bonus that he got before, the anchor bonus in damage. But I think most interestingly is he's getting that team up with Luna, being able to freeze people from range, which, you know, if you're far enough, you're going to freeze them, and that's the range that you play on Hawkeye is far, so you're going to freeze them, and then you get to hit them in the head again. He's going to be able to generate a lot of kills in the mid fight, which I think is a really big deal. And also we combine that with Luna getting a lot stronger. And the thing is, Luna's ultimate got more expensive, but now Luna's primary is going to do more damage and do more heals. And the thing that you need to understand here is that buff in damage and heals almost purely makes up for the nerf in her ult, the quote-unquote nerf. Like, they're quote-unquote nerfing it, but really it's going to be about the same, and Luna's going to be more powerful, more impactful now, plus you get extra HP if you hit a freeze. So they just, like, really supercharged Luna, who was already a top 3 support in the meta, and they gave her a really powerful synergy with Hawkeye. And of course, she's going to be played in poke compositions. She plays really well in poke compositions, capable of doing damage from range. So basically, Luna is just most likely going to be one of the best supports in this new meta, but I also think that the rise in bannings will happen with this because a lot of people are not going to want to have to play around the Luna synergy with Hawkeye, and Luna herself being more powerful. I do think that she's going to be the target of a lot more bans in this meta for both ranked and pro play alike. Now for Star-Lord, he is getting a nerf in his ultimate, and it is going to be a felt nerf. I think Star-Lord was a character that could build up her ult super quickly if you got a lot of proactive E's, especially with Magneto Bubble, and that's really going to be nerfed because you're not going to get ult nearly as fast. But when you do have your ultimate, you're going to be able to do more burst damage, and you're going to be able to do it from further away. Now, a lot of people are like, Mills, when does this actually matter? Well, this matters when you're trying to delete flyers. This matters in really chaotic battlefields where you can kind of pick someone apart outside of a defensive ult. And I think that overall, it's a nice change to the ult, but it's going to be ultimately felt as a nerf because uptime is really important for that ultimate of Star-Lord. If you have like 2 less ults throughout the course of a game, that can be a really big deal. So I think that Star-Lord in particular is going to be hurt by this, but there are going to be some key moments where that ultimate buff, the buff and damage and range, is going to be really felt and feel really good. But the next category I want to talk about is massive ranked outliers. These are things that specifically affect ranked over pro play, but they're big outliers or things that you should know that they really change a lot. And number one is the Venom and Spidey team up is no longer here. This is a really big deal because this combo was very difficult to deal with if there was skilled Venoms and skilled Spideys as a solo without a ton of peel. You're no longer gonna have to fight this matchup, even though individually they still work well as characters. Not giving that combo to Spidey. A lot of Spidey mains are gonna feel that. There's a lot of Spider-Man mains that kind of crutch on it a bit as well. Now, the no ammo overdrive is a big thing. Now, Punisher's gonna be stronger solo, but not having that full auto, that was a really good fold to Flyers. It was a really good fold to Groots. It was a good fold to tank heavy compositions, triple tank compositions, and I think that they're kind of relying heavily on the flying characters and Squirrel Girl, which we'll talk about in a second, to deal with some of these heavier tank compositions, but Punisher is not going to be part of it. Notably, that no more full auto shotgun is a really, really big deal. And then, of course, Squirrel Girl, a character that, depending on what rank of player you ask, will have completely different answers. I think past a certain level of elo, Squirrel Girl is not a problem because she's a threat that can be hunted down and pushed down and killed, but you know, at a certain elo, Squirrel Girl is just this unstoppable menace that is going to become more unstoppable. So if you haven't figured out how to deal with Squirrel Girl, the TLDR that you need to understand is that the longer Squirrel Girl stays alive, the more your team is at risk of death, right? Squirrel Girl is not a character you can just let live, let stay around. She needs to be the target of your engages, your plays, your cycles in and out should include Squirrel Girl. If you're a Psylocke, you need to set up, go in, kill Squirrel Girl, go out. You cannot just allow her to exist. The longer she just gets to do whatever she wants, the less she's a liability for her team, the more she is getting value. And you need to make her a liability. And there's a lot of ways to do that. There's a lot of characters that hunt her. There's a lot of flowers she can't touch. But the next category I want to talk about is characters that are hard to evaluate early. There's 3 characters that I think if anyone knows exactly how these characters are going to impact the meta, they're probably lying because it's really, really almost impossible to predict. Number 1 is Jeff the Shark. I think this character is just a different character than he was before. There's a lot of things about him that is weaker, but he's not really a DPS Jeff anymore. Completely different character. I have yet to form an opinion until I play the character extensively. And to be honest with you, I do not know how to evaluate him at all. I will say that up until this point, the vast majority of low elo Jeff the Shark players have been playing Jeff the Shark as a support and not a DPS, which has really been wrong to play him in that way. But the new way that Jeff the Shark is created, those of you that are still playing him that way, it's going to be a bit better. Will it still be good? I don't know, but it's going to be better than it was before. So that's something, I guess. Number 2, Ultron is a flyer, and Ultron looks particularly strong. There's a couple of things about Ultron, though. Doesn't have very high heals, so I wouldn't be surprised if Ultron is in a triple support composition. Another thing that's really scary and important is that Ultron is really good at pocketing a specific DPS, and I think that a very strong composition in ranked play would be Ultron and another flyer taking a very aggressive off angle. Like imagine Ultron and Iron Man flying at a flank. The Ultron pockets, puts a little healing drone on the Iron Man, and they just go to town on something. Like that can easily happen, and that's going to be powerful. I already know that. But how strong is that going to be? How high in elo can that reach? How high in the meta can that go? We don't know the answers to these questions. We don't know what Ultron looks like as a support that gets to do a ton of damage, but also doesn't provide a ton of burst healing. What does the composition look like around Ultron? We'll have to wait and see. Number 3, the last one that's hard to evaluate is Thor. Now, I personally hate the change that they've done to Thor, and I really wish they wouldn't push it through. I made an entire rant about this already, but the thing you need to understand is that with a push towards poke compositions, a Awakening Ruin bot in Thor might be actually reasonably strong. Like just sitting behind your Magneto and chucking giant amounts of damage down the lanes, it's strong. Like we all know how strong the Awakening Rune is. Is it a boring playstyle to just spam, you know, triple Awakening Rune back to back to back? I think so, but it might be good in the way that the meta is moving. So Thor could be strong in this new meta, even if he isn't, you know, liked and the playstyle isn't liked. But that's not what we're talking about. We're just talking about power level, and right now there's a lot more questions than answers. So he's another character that's hard to evaluate in the new changing meta with the new changing Thor. Now, there are 7 more things that are still super freaking strong and will undoubtedly still be established in pro meta, in ranked meta, and will be very dominant even though none of these characters got changes. Number 1 is Loki, a character that has been a top 2 or 3 support, is still going to be a top 2 or 3 support. Loki is very powerful. He's good in a variety of compositions, and he's reasonably strong in poke. His weakest composition is definitely Brawl, which has taken a backseat with the Thing being relatively weaker than he has been in the past, and Groot receiving a nerf. I think that Loki is still going to be very good in these poke-heavy compositions, and there's no reason to believe that he's going to move from the meta anytime soon. Also, Loki Luna is still a very strong backline if both go unbanned. Number 2 is Invisible Woman, a character that did receive a slight nerf in the synergy, the Fantastic Four synergy, but outside of that, the character is left unchanged, and the character is still very, very strong. She's still an amazing character at pocketing other flyers, giving them shields constantly. I think that's a really big deal and really, really good. In addition to these things, Invisible Woman has just consistently been getting better as the communities has been getting better at Invisible Woman, a character that was obviously very strong on release, but took a while for people to really, unlock her true potential, and people are starting to. So Invisible Woman is still going to be a very, very good support. Number 3, the last support we'll talk about is Res Comp as a whole. Adam and Mantis didn't get any changes, and while Star-Lord did get some changes, Res Comp as a synergy did not. And Res Comp is still going to be strong, and I would not be surprised if triple support Res Comp is going to be something that we'll see a lot of play. I would not be surprised if we see Adam, Mantis, Ultron with the Star-Lord and 2 tanks very soon. It makes a lot of sense. It seems like a reasonable composition, and running that triple support is gonna be pretty important in my opinion with Ultron most likely. So looking for, a way to fit in extra bits of synergy or extra bits of utility. So I'm thinking either Res Comp or Loki are most likely gonna see a lot of play around Ultron. Also, Rocket could be in there as well. This would make the most sense. The number 4 is Wolverine. I think a lot of people keep sleeping on this character when he's still insane, and he's not just insane only up against Groot. He's pretty good against just about any tank, and with Emma getting weaker, being able to bait that diamond form is important, and you're going to find weaknesses and vulnerabilities to kidnap people with Wolverine. I think Wolverine, especially on the maps where you could pull people off the map, is really, really good. Against compositions you can brawl in is really great, so even against characters you wouldn't think Wolverine's okay against, like the Thing, if you're playing a brawl heavy comp, Wolverine can brawl with the Thing and trade favorably up against him. And he's really good against characters like Strange that are probably going to see an uptick in play this season. Overall, I think a lot of people have been sleeping on Wolverine, even though he's still a really, really phenomenal character. And he's also good at creating kills with his ultimate, even through defensive ults, like pulling people out of invisible ult and killing them outside of it, stuff like that. Wolverine is still really great. And of course, he's great with the rocket synergy, being able to super jump someone way back into your spawn or off the map. The number 5, Hulk. Well, Hulk did not get changed directly. Namor did get nerfed, and then also Iron Man got removed from the Hulk synergy. However, Hulk has just been really, really good lately. Just by himself, very impactful, capable of doing a lot of different things. I think that Thor being removed from this off-tank roaming role, Hulk was already good at doing that too, and now Hulk is kind of like the only one in the tanking category that's really good at that. So I think Hulk is going to be better filling at that role, and just is going to pick up some play points there with people kind of searching for that experience more. And then also in general, Hulk is just good against a lot of things, reasonably good against flyers as well. A lot of Hulks are going to be jumping on these Ultrons and tagging to the ground. Hulk is still going to be really good, still going to be really strong. Expect Hulk to actually be on the up and up in a world where some other tanks got some nerfs and Hulk did not. I would see that Hulk is actually going to be a fair bit better, even in 2.5 than he was in 2, even though he was really strong in 2. Number 6 on the list is Mr. Fantastic. Still a very, very strong DPS, just still underrated to this point. The character got massively buffed previously, and he's basically left intact. A phenomenal DPS that can carry in the right situations, and the brawl comps that will still exist will most likely want to play a Fantastic, and the anti-dive compositions, Mr. Fantastic's still going to be great there. And the last, but certainly not least character I wanted to include here is Bucky. That double charge has been a really great deal for Bucky, making him very, very tanky and hard to kill. And a lot of people have been sleeping on him a bit too much. He's still a phenomenal character, whether you're playing him in a poke comp or a brawl or a dive. He's very flexible in his strength. He's still very good against Loki because he gets resets. And I still think he's in a really, really great spot. Having 2 charges that both ground flyers make him a lot better up against many of the flying cast. He's good against characters that want to jump in, like Wolverine and Cap and Hulk. And yeah, I just think that he is gonna consistently be very strong going into next midseason. So definitely keep your eye on Bucky, and he's a DPS that I would recommend picking up. If you don't quite know what to play, but you want something that's kind of good against everything, Bucky is really that DPS this season. Now, anyways, this is the full pre-meta snapshot for Season 2.5. Let me know what changes you're most interested in and what comps are you most interested in building around in the comments down below. Thank you so much for coming by. I hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.